Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Luke had always been the kind of guy who trusted people sometimes more than he should have. At 38, he was a respected naval architect with a steady career and a name that actually meant something in his field. He believed in doing things the right way, in keeping your word, in staying loyal even when it wasn't convenient. Honesty wasn't just something he valued. It was the framework he'd built his whole life on. He'd met Andrea 6 years earlier at an art exhibition, the kind with clean white walls and soft lighting where people held plastic cups of wine and pretended they weren't nervous. Andrea didn't pretend. She moved through that space like she belonged there, like the ideas on the walls were speaking her language. Luke had been drawn to her immediately, not just to her beauty, but to her energy, the sharpness in her eyes, the way she seemed to see details everyone else walked past. She was a graphic designer, talented in that effortless way that made creativity look like breathing. When she talked about color and balance and composition, it sounded like she was describing the world's hidden blueprint. Their relationship clicked fast, not rushed, exactly, just obvious. 2 years later, they were standing on the shoreline in an intimate seaside ceremony, salt in the air, waves rolling in like they were part of the soundtrack. Trevor stood beside Luke as his best man. Trevor wasn't just a friend, he was history. Luke and Trevor had been tied since they were 8 years old, two kids thrown together by circumstance and glued together by time. The kind of bond that didn't need constant checking in because it simply existed, like gravity. They'd grown up side by side, survived every awkward phase, shared secrets they'd never admit out loud to anyone else, and walked each other through first loves and the kind of heartbreak that felt like the end of the world when you were 17. Trevor had been there when Luke's father died, showing up without being asked, sitting with him in silence when there was nothing to say. And Luke had returned that same loyalty years later when Trevor lost his job and everything in his life cracked open at once. Luke didn't hesitate, he helped him get back on his feet, because that's what you do when someone is yours. That friendship wasn't a part of Luke's life. It was one of the pillars holding it up. It wasn't just what Luke believed in, it was who he believed he was. The first 4 years of marriage had been exactly what Luke thought marriage would feel like. Andrea worked at a boutique studio downtown, building visual identities for startups and small businesses, logos, branding, sleek presentations that made new companies look like they already belonged in the big leagues. She'd come home talking about fonts like they were personalities and clients like they were wild animals. You had to approach slowly. Luke spent his days designing commercial vessels, the kind of work most people didn't understand until they saw it in motion. He loved it, the precision, the problem solving, the quiet satisfaction of turning engineering into something elegant. He'd always thought there was a special kind of beauty in functionality, in watching something huge and complex move exactly the way it was meant to because someone had done the math right. They had routines that weren't boring, just familiar. Dinner together most nights, a show they'd pretend not to be invested in but absolutely were. Weekend mornings that started slow. Trips they planned, some they took, some that stayed as ideas floating between them like promises postponed. And the laughter, the inside jokes that made no sense to anyone else but could have them both wheezing at the kitchen counter like idiots. Trevor was part of that life too. He'd show up on weekends like he had a standing invitation to their happiness barbecues in the backyard, craft beers he swore came from this tiny place nobody knows about, and those exaggerated Tinder stories he told like he was on stage. Andrea would laugh until she cried, wiping her eyes and telling him he was ridiculous while Luke shook his head, smiling like this was exactly how things were supposed to be. But about 8 months ago, something shifted, not in a dramatic, obvious way. It was quieter than that, subtle, the way a room can feel different even if you can't point to what changed. Andrea started coming home later. At first it sounded reasonable. Urgent projects, demanding clients, tight deadlines, the kind of pressure Luke understood without needing it explained. He'd done his own share of all-nighters, hunched over technical proposals with stale coffee and the glow of a monitor burning into his eyes. So he adjusted. He reheated her dinner and left it in the fridge with a little note, something sweet, something small, just to remind her he was thinking of her. He'd fall asleep before she got home, telling himself it was just a busy season. Nothing more. Except in the mornings, Andrea didn't feel like herself. She was there, technically moving around the apartment, brushing her hair, sipping coffee, but it was like part of her was somewhere else. Attention split, thoughts locked behind a door Luke couldn't open. When he asked about work, her answers came out flat and generic, like she'd rehearsed them. It's busy. The client's annoying. You know how it is. And Luke would nod, because he did know how it was. But he also knew how Andrea used to talk. She used to ramble when she was passionate, complain with flair when she was annoyed, tell stories with details so vivid Luke could picture the meeting room, the faces, the tone. Now it was like she didn't want to give him anything real to hold on to. Then came the Thursdays. Every Thursday night, Andrea had pilots class with the girls. A new group she'd met, she said. She made it sound casual, almost harmless networking. Basically, other designers, creative professionals. They'd work out, then go out for wine afterward, talk about projects, trade contacts, build connections. Andrea explained it like it was an extension of her career. A smart move, the kind of thing ambitious people did. And Luke, being Luke, believed her. It made sense. Luke encouraged it. It's important to have your own social life, he said, genuinely, believing every word. She smiled, kissed his forehead, and told him he was the best husband in the world. But Luke started noticing things, small inconsistencies that piled up like dust on forgotten surfaces. Andrea came back from pilots without her gym bag, left it in the car. She'd see. Her hair wasn't sweaty, and her skin lacked that post-workout flush. I showered there, she'd explain, as if it were obvious. One Thursday, Luke called her at 9 p.m. because the kitchen pipe had burst and he needed the plumber's number she'd as before. Andrea answered breathless, loud music in the background, male voices, laughing. I'm in traffic. I'll call you back, she said, and hung up before he could reply. She never called back. Luke started asking questions. How was pilots? Who was there tonight? Your friend from last week. What's her name again? Andrea's answers grew increasingly rigid. Why so many questions? Are you interrogating me? Luke, seriously. Thais is starting to feel controlling. He'd back off. Apologize. Say he was just curious, that he wanted to hear about their day. But the feeling in his gut would go away. That primal intuition every human has, the internal alarm that sounds when something is fundamentally wrong. It was on a Tuesday that everything truly began to crumble. Luke was working from home on a ferry boat design when Andrea's phone rang in the kitchen. She was in the shower. He hadn't meant to answer it, but the screen lit up and he saw the name of Trevor. Nothing unusual, Trevor Khaled sometimes. But then a message came in. Luke didn't want to look. He respected her privacy, but the preview appeared automatically in the screen. Can do next Thursday work meeting. How about Friday night instead? Next Thursday. Friday night, Trevor. Luke's heart raced. There was an explanation. There had to be. Maybe Andrea was planning a surprise. Maybe Trevor needed help with some mething and had arranged to meet her because heck knew Luke would be busy. Rational explanations formed and collapsed in his mind like sand castles hit by waves. He picked up her phone with trembling hands. It was unlocked. She always left it unlocked at home, saying she trusted him completely. The cruel irony. He opened the messages, scrolled up, and the world he knew simply ceased to exist. Still can't stop thinking about our last night. Can't wait until Thursday. What you did last night messed with me all day. Photos, videos, months of messages. Months of betrayal, not just betrayal, a meticulous conspiracy full of laughter about how easy it was to fool poor Luke, how he was so naive, how he'd never suspect a thing. Trevor, his soul brother, the man who'd stood by him through the worst moments of his life, and Andrea, the woman he'd planned to grow old with. Luke locked the phone and put it back exactly where it had been. He went upstairs to his office, closed the door, and sat in silence, staring at his computer screen without really seeing anything. The sound of the shower stopped. Andrea hummed a song in the bedroom. Normal life. domestic routine, as if the universe hadn't just imploded. That night, she asked if he was okay. "You're quiet." Luke smiled. "Just tired." "Complicated project." She accepted the answer, kissed his cheek, and went to sleep. Luke stayed awake until 4 in the morning, staring at ceiling, building, and dismantling plans. In the days that followed, he became someone else. On the outside, the same Luke. On the inside, a cold mechanic calculating every move. He hired a private investigator on Wednesday, a discreet guy recommended by a lawyer friend. "I need photos. I need evidence that'll hold up in court." The investigator, a man in his 50s who looked like he'd seen it all, just nodded. "Thursday night, you said ease. You'll have what you need by Friday morning." Luke kept up the routine, woke up, kissed Andrea, wished her a good day, went to work. She kept going out on Thursdays. He stopped asking questions altogether. Completely stopped questioning her. Andrea seemed to relax. "Thanks for understanding," she said one Wednesday night. "I know I was harsh on you these past few weeks." "You weren't being controlling. I was just stressed." Luke held her hand. "We're a team," he said, and wanted to throw up at the sound of his own voice. On Thursday, the investigator called at 6:00 p.m. there at the River City Motel, room 214. Arrived at 5:30. "I've got photos of them entering the parking lot together." "Want me to stay?" "Stay," Luke replied, "and send me the motel's full address." Luke sat in the living room for 20 minutes just breathing. Then an idea began to take shape. He didn't just want to confront them. He wanted them to know. He wanted them to feel even a fraction of the humiliation he felt. He grabbed his laptop, opened Google Maps, located their Riverside Motel, searched for nearby pizzerias, found one away, Sal's Pizza with decent reviews and fast delivery. Perfect. He called Sal's Pizza. "Good evening. Hi. I'd like to place a delivery order." "Sure. What's the address?" "Riverside Motel, room 214. A brief pause. Probably nothing the clerk hadn't seen before. "Motel get food deliveries, okay? What do you have?" "One large pepperoni pizza, and I want you to put a note in the box." "A note?" "Yes. Can you write down exactly what I'm about to dictate?" "Go ahead. From your husband's kitchen. Enjoy your meal." Silence on the other end. Then a nervous laugh. "Dude, seriously? Dead serious? How much is it?" $22 with delivery. "I'll pay $50 if you personally deliver it and take a photo of whoever opens the door." Another pause. "Are you a cop or something?" "No. Just a husband." "Got it. Deal. Send it via Venmo." "Sending it now." Luke transferred the money, then called the investigator. "There will be some activity at room 214 in about half an hour. Don't miss it." He waited. 35 minutes later, the phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, man? I think you're going to want to see this. It was the delivery guy." "What happened?" "The guy who opened the door went ghost white. Like actually white. Tried to slam the door, but I already saw the woman bind him. She started screaming, asking who sent the pizza. Took the photo you wanted. It's in your email. Thanks. Good luck, man. Seriously." Luke opened his email. The photo showed Trevor, shirt unbuttoned, eyes wide with pure shock, holding the pizza box like it was about to explode. In the background, partially visible, Andrea in a motel robe, mouth open in horror. The investigator called 2 minutes later. "Got it. Photos of the door. Both of them during delivery. Their reactions and video of them arriving at the motel fully documented. Perfect. Email everything and thanks. It's my job. But can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why the pizza?" "Because they wanted them to know I knew. And I wanted them to know in the most humiliating way possible." Luke's phone rang 20 minutes later. "Andrea." He didn't answer. It rang again and again. Messages started flooding in. "Luke, I can explain. Please answer. It's not what you think." He turned his phone off. Half an hour later, the front door opened. Andrea rushed in. Mascara streaked across her face, eyes red. Luke sat in the living room armchair, laptop open, calmly organizing the files the investigator had sent. "Luke!" she shouted. He didn't even look up. "Luke, listen to me." "No." His voice was flat, emotionless. "There's nothing you can say that I want to hear. It was a mistake. I swear. Just a few times. I have months of messages. Andrea, photos, videos you two sent each other. Don't insult me by pretending it was just a few times. She stopped realizing Heck really knew everything. How did you the phone? It doesn't matter, Ho. What matters is it's over. Luke, please. We can talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Tomorrow morning, you're leaving this house. You can pack your clothes. Everything else stays. Millowire will contact you Monday with divorce papers. And Trevor? What about Trevor? Luke's voice finally gained an edge. Cold, controlled anger. You want to know what I'm going to do to Trevor? Andrea nodded, tears streaming. Nothing. Absolutely nothing, because Trevor died to me the second he chose to betray my trust with my wife. Ghosts don't deserve my attention. That was cruel, she whispered. Sending that pizza. It was cruel and humiliating. Luke finally looked at her. Really looked. And Andrea recoiled at what she saw in his eyes. You want to talk about cruelty? Cruelty was you and my best friend laughing at me for 6 months. Cruelty was me trusting both of you more than anyone else on the planet. Cruelty was you sleeping in my bed every night and looking me in the eyes every morning knowing exactly what you were doing. The pizza was mercy, because I could have done much, much worse. His phone rang. Unknown number. Luke answered without taking his eyes off Andrea. Luke, Trevor's voice trembling. Man, I never call me again. Don't try to offend me. Don't show up in front of me. If I see you on the street, I'll cross to the other side. You don't exist to me anymore. Luke, we need to talk. Talk about what? How you destroyed a 30-year friendship. How you're such an empty person that the only thing you could do with your free time was betray the one guy who's always had your back. No, Trevor, we don't need to talk. We need to never see each other again. He hung up. Andrea was sobbing now, sitting on the living room floor, completely shattered. Part of Luke wanted to feel satisfaction, part of him wanted to feel anything. But there was only a vast emptiness where emotions used to live. You'll stay at a hotel tonight, he said. Tomorrow you can come get your things while I'm not here. I'll leave the key with the neighbor. Luke, there's nothing left to say, Andrea. You made your choices. Now live with them. She left 10 minutes later with a small suitcase she'd hastily packed in the bedroom. Luke locked the door behind her and finally let his shoulders drop. He sat on the floor, leaning against the door and just breathed. He didn't cry. Couldn't. He was too numb. In the days that followed, things moved with mechanical efficiency. Luke's lawyer, Karen, a competent woman in her 40s who specialized in contentious divorces, reviewed all the documentation. You've got a solid case, she said. With his evidence, she has no ground to contest anything. We'll get you a no-fault divorce, but fully documented to protect your financial interests. The house, it's yours. It was in your name before the marriage and stayed that way. And shared assets, we'll split them evenly as the law requires, but she won't get anything beyond what's fair on paper, and certainly no alimony. Andrea tried calling 23 times the first week. Luke blocked the number. She sent emails. He set up an automatic filter. Trevor showed up at his house. Luke called the police. After that, they stopped trying. The news spread. Of course, within 2 days, their entire social circle knew. Reactions were predictable. Friends split, but most sided with Luke. Betrayal was bad enough. Betrayal with your best friend was unforgivable. Andrea lost 3 clients the first weekends the story reached them. Trevor got fired from his tech startup job when the rumor leaked internally and reached Thecio, a man known for his rigid moral stance. We don't want that kind of person representing our company, had said. Andrea's parents called Luke. Her mother, crying, apologized. I didn't raise her to be like this. No, Mrs. Morris. It's not your fault. Her father wanted to talk, his voice sharp. What are you going to do now? Get divorced and move in with my life. That's it. The question carried an edge, as if Luke should do more. What would you have me do? Hither? Destroy her life beyond what she's already done to herself. I'm not that kind of person. She destroyed you. Shattered. But I won't give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. 3 weeks later, Luke was in his office when Karen called. The papers have been signed. She didn't contest anything. Divorce should be finalized in 60 days fast. She knows she has no defense. Honestly, I think she just wants this over. Where to? Luke started therapy not because he was broken, but because he was smart enough to know that untreated trauma turns into poison. His therapist, Dr. Yolanda Chen, a patient's 60-year-old woman, listened to him for 3 sessions before saying, "You're processing this in an incredibly healthy way." "I don't feel healthy." "Nobody does, but you're not self-destructing. You Reno obsessed with revenge. You're handling emotions as they come." "That's rare." "Was the pizza too much?" "Shallot." The pizza was creative, and honestly it gave you some control in a situation where you had none. It wasn't violent. It wasn't cruel beyond what was necessary. It was theatrical, and sometimes we need theater. 6 months after the pizza incident, Luke was finally starting to feel like himself again. The divorce had been finalized. The house was quiet, but it was a peace he'd learned to appreciate. He adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Barney, who forced him to go outside, take walks, remember that life still happened out there. It was on one of those walks on a sunny Saturday morning that Luke saw them. Andrea and Trevor leaving a cafe holding hands. She was thinner, her hair different. Trevor looked tired, older than his 37 years. They saw him at the same moment. Andrea froze. Trevor looked away. For a moment, Luke considered crossing the street as promised, but then he realized he didn't need to. He didn't feel anger, didn't feel pain, felt absolutely nothing. He kept walking, Barney happy at his side. Andrea called his name. "Luke." He stopped, turned. She approached, leaving Trevor behind. "Hi," she said, voice small. "Hi. Are you okay?" "I am." And it was true. "And you, Andrea?" She hesitated. "We're trying to make it work. Me and Trevor." "I see." An uncomfortable silence. Luke could have said so many things. Could have pointed out the obvious irony. Could have made a cruel remark about relationships built on betrayal. But it wasn't worth the effort. "I wish you both luck," he said, and meant it. Because whatever they built would always stained by how it began. They'd always live with that shadow. That was punishment enough. "Luke," she started, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. Truly. I destroyed everything." "You did. But I rebuilt. And honestly, I think I rebuilt something better." "Have you met someone?" Hope and fear mixed equally in the question. "Not yet. But I will. When I'm ready. And when I do, it'll be with someone who deserves me. Someone who understands what loyalty means." Andrea nodded, swallowed a sob. "You deserve that." "I know." Luke gave a nod, a final farewell, and continued his walk. He didn't look back. Didn't need to. That chapter was closed, its pages sealed with fire and ash. What came next was his to write with now-invented co-authors. No plots of betrayal. Barney happily barked at a squirrel. Luke smiled. A simple life. An honest life. A life where pizza was just pizza and Thursdays are just Thursdays. He liked this life. Was learning to love it actually. And in the end, maybe that was the best revenge of all. Not just serving, but thriving. Not just rebuilding, but building something genuinely better from the rubble of what had been destroyed. Thiessen warmed his back as he walked. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang. It was a new day, and Luke was finally and truly ready to live it. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.